Hey everyone.
Hey,
I think we're going to have Jonathan here today, so we'll give him a couple of minutes. Oh, never mind. He just DM'd me and said he can't make it. So.
Would we want to revisit the time of this meeting to include him? Because I know his schedule is normally like late afternoon Central Time for him. Like he set aside like that time for
Yeah.
EDU.
Well, I mean, yeah, we could ask him, but it's something we definitely did talk about at the outset. If we mentioned that we had a couple of daytime meetings a month, so it may have just fallen off his radar because we switched to this bi-weekly right as he was starting. So also as a side note, this is just like sort of housekeeping, not meeting proper. But so I haven't been hitting channel, mentioning channel whenever I do these reminders, just because there's so many people in it. But maybe that actually makes my reminders, further reminders in Slack. Maybe that actually makes them less useful though. I don't know. I don't know what the.
I don't know. The flip side is like people at here or at channel everywhere all the time on Edgy, especially when they post things in multiple channels, and it's really frustrating. So I don't know.
Well, that's definitely why I've defaulted to not doing that, because since there's four or five people that attend this meeting and then like 108 in the channel, that seems like rude.
Maybe just at here might be okay for the.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, especially since you only post a notice in the one channel. So
Yeah.
we could see someday if that means more people show up.
Do we know if Dan is coming or no?
I have no idea. I haven't heard anything from him basically since the last meeting when he said he wasn't going to show because of jury duty.
Oh yeah.
Could be that's still going.
Lucky
Maybe
devil.
he's trying El Chapo. I guess that's done now, so he should be here.
Well, so just as a reminder, what we talked about doing last time, and I just forgot, was us doing more like the all edgy and sort of doing a read through rather than us all talking through our sections, so we can really focus our time more on discussion. So why don't we all go ahead and take a few minutes just to do that read through, and then we can talk through the parts that need to be talked through. Okay. So does anybody have questions for Gretchen about her update? Okay. Moving on to the dev updates. I actually have a question for Rob. This is like sort of a culture community standards type of question. On the differ, because I've been, looking at that, this issue with the CSS changes breaking the usability of the diffs in some places. You sort of asked the contributor on that for some feedback about what the problem they were trying to solve with the code that caused this problem, and it's been sort of quiet. I haven't checked it today, but as of last week, there was no response. Is that kosher for one of us just to go ahead and offer a fix that we think doesn't undo their fix?
Yeah, I think it totally is. It doesn't seem like he's going to proactively go do it. So we may as well do it. I think in doing it, we should be careful to mention, I'm blanking on his name, the guy at Internet Archive who was sort of mostly managing him on this stuff. Since Fotis, the person who did the original work, was a GSOC student for Internet Archive. And so, yeah, so we should, because he put it in as a result of stuff they were encountering in having the differ in beta. I'm surprised that with the variety of things they have, they didn't encounter this issue, or maybe they did and they were unable to diagnose it. I don't know. Yeah, Vangelis, thank you. So we should make sure Vangelis knows that we're making a change, so he has an opportunity to review it and test it with cases they have where the previous fix is what was needed, so that we don't re-break those. I think it should be pretty straightforward not to do. I've been meaning to get to this also, but if somebody else has time and has a clear sense of how they think they would fix it, go for it. It's just like no time.
Yeah. Well, it's the changes that he made were sort of broadly scoped. So, and I think you offer some pretty clear guidance there for like, hey, what if we just didn't, munge everything? What if we did sort of something a little bit less than everything? So, yeah. Okay, that's good feedback.
Yeah, I tried to offer some pretty clear guidance in case he might actually want to fix it, but I guess he isn't. Since we're still on my section, I just want to call out the issue with Wayback importing. So it turns out Wayback importing has been super broken for the past month and a half, and I don't know if I broke it or somebody else. The way in which it was broken, I'm mind blown that I would have left it that way, but it's entirely possible because I don't think anybody else has been messing with that thing in production. Anyway, Gretchen had mentioned some snapshots of a page, and there weren't any newer than a certain date, which in my mind, I was like, oh, the explanation for this is probably very benign, but I'll go check anyway. I'm 99% certain that it's just that all the newer snapshots are exactly the same hash, and so we don't store or present them. And I went to look, and I was like, oh no, there's definitely some very different versions of the page after that date. Specifically, that was the last Wayback snapshot before they added shutdown banners. So the next version has shutdown banners, and then there aren't very many changes for a while. And so I went to look into it and realized that the importer had been halfway updated and was left in a bad merge state, and so Python would start the interpreter and it would just be like, this is not valid syntax, I can't run this program. And then it would stop. And we had lots of logs saying that, but no no like proper like error alerting because it didn't even get to the point in the program where it would be able to like load the alerting system to be able to to send the failure anywhere.
So are we writing literally like images with like a diverged Git repo or something?
So I never really operationalized in a good way the Webpack importing stuff because it's not done. And it was always in this like experimental state, and I was constantly changing it and updating it up until about a month and a half ago when I stopped having much time. And it seemed to mostly be working at that point. So it's like, okay, if I can't afford the time, I can leave it running and it's doing its job. Although I guess the last thing I did was break it. So it's sort of been, we've gotten some periodic updates afterwards from like when I manually import some things and like other stuff comes along for the ride. And nobody has called out like a strange missing like amount of Wayback stuff since mid-December. so between those things, I just like never knew that it was broken. And so basically I discovered that I fixed that error. In so doing, noticed a few other errors that had been plaguing that importing for a while that I had just been so wrapped up in the mess of doing it that I had never found. So that was good, I guess. So I fixed a bunch of things with that. It's running again. It should be doing daily live updates now. And I'm also running it in piecewise to kind of backfill things. The flip side of that is that now, well, as of like 15 or 20 minutes ago, we had 100,000 some items in the analysis queue. So I think probably the answer to that one is I'm just going to blow away the queue at some point later this week. Otherwise, like the differs will be chewing on that for a long time because our system around doing the analysis is super substandard. So that's like the issue going on there. I just want to call that out. Like clearly some people know the status, and I will probably need to write up an incident report on that sometime later today or tomorrow when I have sanity back.
If you would like, I can stub that out for you because I know you're super time limited. So I could like at least get started some of the basic description of it, and I probably pull out from your commit messages what some of it is. That way, that might just save you a little bit of time. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think the commit messages mostly they show ongoing work and like general bug fixes in that area, but they don't really illustrate the major failure, which is entirely like on the machine and not in code. Offside. Because it's it was not even a bad merge. It was like a half merge. Like it was literally sitting there going like, you gonna fix this so I can complete the merge? So, yeah, I mean, which I did, but then the right answer was just to blow it all away. And because it was really, I'd been rebasing what was there onto like what was actually on the branch.
Yeah.
And so, and when I was done and had it all cleaned up, I checked and that was no different than the tip of the branch. So I just reset it to the tip of the branch. But that was all just like state of data on the server, not like source code problems.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case, I'll just let you do that. But I do think that'll be a good thing. I think that's worthy of an incident report.
Oh yeah. That's it from me, I think.
Okay. Poking back over to the agenda here. I don't think anything I'm working on needs a call out specifically, but
what is on the list of things for web monitoring that needs funding, at least for the dev side?
Just to kind of jump into those other discussion items. So I went ahead and dropped a link to that doc that Sarah and friends were working on. some of this discussion happened with me in the room, and I think some of it happened after I was out of the room. But basically, the parts of the conversation I was in.
Sorry, quick question.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt too much, but is everybody cool with the fact that that doc looks like it's public, so it's viewable by anybody with the link? We should find out about that and see if we need to remove that link from these notes.
Yeah, I assume since the question was for us to talk about it at this meeting that was okay, but let me go ahead and DM Sarah.
I think often there's a slight mental disconnect for a lot of folks that the dev side is like this piece that pokes outside of Edgy into broader public conversation.
Right. Let's see here. We'll just do that right now because she's online. So I went ahead and put that question out. But to sort of talk about the parts that are sort of general, the things that we talked about were in the meeting that I was in, where obviously we have existing hosting costs, AWS, that are currently 100% defrayed, that it's not a ton of money. You know, like $800 a month-ish would about cover what we're doing right now, last time I checked. That there would be, you know, we realized that we needed to add this other data source. And I think in a bigger, more important way, this actually relates to this incident we were just talking about, that we're not just adding a different data source, that we're adding a separate sphere of activities to what we're doing, you know, with doing our own crawling and archiving, you know, not just keeping, in some ways, the things we've been keeping are sort of our own convenience working copies whenever we're pulling stuff in from these other data sources. But for instance, like with this incident that we had, you know, if we had a ops blow up on our own crawler and we didn't have snapshots to go back to, you know, that data we just wouldn't have it. That's sort of an aside, but that's a nice thing we don't have to worry about now. But so we talked about, okay, hosting, off track, sorry. Hosting for what we're doing currently, the idea that there would be a hosting cost associated with operationalizing Walk. It sounds like there's already testing happening there. And I didn't have a clear idea of what that would be. So I was sort of like, it should be something figurable, but a wild outlandish guess would be what we're doing now times 2. And then there was some talk about the idea that maybe there could be funding for the development to get basically somebody's time dedicated to Walk that's not volunteer time. That I don't have clear visibility into, because my understanding is there's already, like, Brendan's time is on that, is like some of that's already coming from maybe his startup work that's related to what he's doing there. So I don't know if he could, I didn't get into that discussion, but those were the pieces that I was aware of.
I think with Brendan's time, that should be considered right now. That's volunteer time. The thing there is, like with all volunteers, like more money might be able to support them working on it with more time, or more money might not matter at all because that person just can't give more time, which would be the case with Brendan. More money is never going to change that situation. But the time that he's donating, at least as far as Walk is concerned, should really be accounted for by us as volunteer. For him, it's like he runs a startup. It's however much time he wants to take out of all of your waking time that is running a startup to volunteer to do other things.
The way at least one of these grants that was talked about is structured is about for basically groups that encounter an unexpected hurdle in their progress. And so we did talk about how that seems like this could be a good fit with the work that we did on Internet Archive. I mean, I feel like when you look at the technical, the shape, the characteristics of what Rob wrote to integrate with Internet Archive, it basically is the thing that we plan to have somebody write. It talks to CDX, it gets the stuff. But the hurdle is, as that's been implemented, we realized that but the service they offer can't really meet the need we were hoping it would fill. So there's kind of talk about how that narrative could fit in with one of these funding options, which it seemed on the outside to be a good fit. Gretchen, I don't know, where you were in the meeting that I was in, was there a subsequent talk, meeting that you guys had and where you talked about this after I was out?
We talked about it at the steering committee meeting a little bit, but just kind of, again, this is an unexpected hurdle, and thinking about what are ways to try to financially support this, but it was just, it was a very short conversation.
Maybe, oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, I think you're right. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but the way you're framing it as a unexpected hurdle is a good framing of it. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it totally is, because we've originally thought Internet Archive will solve all our problems in the most ideal possible way. And integrating with it should be reasonably straightforward because it has an actual API and none of these other issues with Versionista. And it has turned out almost to be in some ways the opposite. And so we pinned a lot on that and are now that is definitely sort of an unexpected hurdle. To the question Gretchen wrote in chat about whether having that grant would free up more of my time. My problem right now is that I have a client who's pulling a lot of my time through probably mid-April. I think right around April 20th is when that contract is supposed to be done. I could go talk with them about whether we can extend the time, and I'm just doing that work, at a half level of time involvement, and therefore it takes 1.5 times longer during that time. And then I might have to have more daytime hours that I can put towards edgy stuff. But that, kind of very much depends on how they feel about that, or whether they'd be like, no, that's not okay. So I think that's my current time and business reality.
Kevin?
But after mid-April, then I'm totally.
Yeah, I was gonna say it probably makes more sense to just wait until mid-April, because I'd imagine it's already mid-February, and however long it takes to apply and get approved and maybe not contort yourself, and then just plan for you to come on after that your current contract.
So the first question is, do we know from any folks what the typical turnaround time is with them? And second is, if that's what the turnaround time looks like anyway, then there aren't sort of other choices. But the thing to keep in mind, I guess, is if that's what the time frame's looking like now, then we have to budget for extending Versionista and all those other things, because our estimate was we need to have this done in March, right? So we're running out we lost Gretchen. But we're kind of running out the clock on when we thought we need to have all that work done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see Gretchen popped in chat that she thinks 2 to 4 weeks is the turnaround time for application on this funding.
So that might be about halfway into that current project, or halfway between now and when that current project with my client should be done.
I think our current Versionista funding runs up. I think we're going to pay one more set at the end, third week of February. And then I think that's it for the current plan. So that would get us through to March 20th, 23rd, that time for those accounts. So, I mean, that just hearing that timeline, that might be beneficial to see if we could extend one more month. So that kind of dovetails into the question of how's the walk testing going?
It's not. I mean, the straight answer is Brendan kind of said at a meeting I was at Monday. He hasn't really had the time for any of this, and that's very visible because none of it's actually moved in Git for basically most of the past month. And we all know how my time has looked, which is not dissimilar. So it hasn't really moved in the time that we really needed it to move a lot. And that's because nobody who's involved has had the time to do the work, which is concerning. But I don't know what else to do about that at this point.
I was gonna ask, I know that like Rob had mentioned you were like ready to rip the Band-Aid, a couple months ago when we first thought about the extension. Is that still a scenario? Like, can we give up Versionista and still like do what we want to do, or do something with Walk and or move forward without Versionista? Because it seems going to be really expensive to finance.
I think the reality of the situation is my discovery of the ops failure last night says no, we can't. I mean, in theory, it would have been much more apparent if we'd had Versionista turned off that everything was very broken. But on the flip side, like clearly it needs a lot more care and feeding from a human who can be there managing the ops side of it right now. And I think like I've said before, the amount of different services and stuff in the system has reached a point where it's great enough that unless I'm having a week where like I can put down a significant amount of like day job client work, I am spending almost all my time that I have for edgy stuff just sort of like keeping the lights on and fixing the whatever weird thing is broken about piping data from Versionista or Wayback or whatever today, or like making sure the server isn't stuck on something, or like fixing an issue with the differ so that it can free itself up, etc. Yeah, like to add to the further ops burden of like, I actually need to spend much more time checking in on how this Wayback Importer is going all the time, is sort of like, well, we're just adding to that cost. That's, I guess, my major concern right now.
I feel like that we are maybe at a point where, because I have done some onboarding with Jonathan, and I made sure that he could, shell into the servers, see that have visibility into AWS, and talk to the Kube cluster. That's basically what we did last week, was just sort of real quick rundown of those things. And I wonder if that there could be some handoff in that direction, at least for the visibility into whether or not services are operating as we hope. You may not be able to correct the issue, but that could maybe you and he could do a little bit of walkthrough on what some of those processes are that you're spending time on, and he could take over some of that. That's like not a big systemic fix, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be good.
And just thinking about like how my time is going at doing dev stuff, and I'm really just now dipping my toes into the water of like writing things that could be mergeable after some work. So like thinking about where like what I could do from a strategic level between now and the end of next month. I don't think I'm gonna make a big difference on the equation. I'll put it that way, on like having Internet Archive be a thing that runs happy on its own, or certainly not walk, because I do not have Go expertise. Obviously, it's pretty actually nice to read, but that's doing. The last time I looked at it, part of the reason it was so pretty was because it didn't have a whole bunch of implementation in it, and that's significant work. That's significant work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think so. Maybe the outcome of that would be because Sarah just sent me that link to that doc not very long before the meeting, but I'll take a read through of that and do a suggest run on it. And Rob, maybe sometime in the next, she was saying she was hoping to get it submitted on Friday. Maybe if you could spare 15 minutes just to give it a quick look through and see if there's anything that looks like factually incorrect or like a mischaracterization from your perspective, that could be good.
Yeah, I'll try and do so. I mean, I'm in the same situation as you, which is like, this is the first I saw of it 10 minutes before the meeting. So I have it opened in my browser, but haven't really read it at all. And we'll try and do so.
Okay. Okay, so we're running a little bit over on time, but we'll put a peg on that. By the way, hi, Dan. Can everybody stick around for a few more minutes for us to talk through these other discussion items?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see here. I think Rob was the author of some of those.
So since Gretchen had to hop off, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot we're talking about the tag situation. I mean, the quick summary for folks who don't have the backstory is Gretchen went through all the EPA.gov URLs and created a set of 2 tags for them. So the idea being that like EPA is the site where we probably see a huge number of changes. And so the thing we did a while back was switch this auto tagging of domain and second level domain. And so now we're generating the sheets based on those tags instead of the like site name in Versionista, which has all kinds of other issues. And so that was a good gain. But the problem is that like the EPA sheet is giant and it makes it really hard for her to split up tasking wise for people. And so she went through and made all these tags specifically for the EPA pages. And then I set up the tasking sheet script to basically say take any combination of tags. So when it hits the EPA ones, it splits up the sheets based on unique combination of like second level domain is EPA and whatever tag of this kind of tag is applied to the page. When she made them, I thought it was just like, I have 2 tags I want to apply to every page. And then after some discussion, I realized she was actually looking at them as a hierarchical thing, which I think is like not a good situation for how tagging works and how the infrastructure is built around tagging. And so my questions here were about like how we can or should resolve that. But if Gretchen's not here, I feel like that's kind of hard to talk about because it's really about like how she's thinking about managing and tagging the data.
Right, like fundamentally, are we thinking about lists or not lists?
Yeah. Do you have any stuff you want to talk about or ask about, Dan?
I'm trying to catch up. Work has been really intense and will continue to be intense for about 2 weeks, which is why you haven't heard much from me. So I'm mainly just here to try not to fall too far behind. Nothing much to ask. I guess I need to read up on what happened with ops. I saw something go by. But if you guys already discussed that, I can just look in the minutes of the video.
Yeah, you should watch the early part of the video. Hopefully I gave a reasonably decent summary, and then I need to write an incident report at some point. But in the short term, when the video uploads in half an hour or something, that will probably be the best summary.
Enough said. Thanks.
So this is not a thing oh yeah, by the way, I'll go ahead and remove that doc link, just because I haven't heard back from Sarah. So better safe than sorry, and everybody's had a chance to grab it out of there. An item that's not in discussion, but I just want to put it out there into people's ears. As we're drawing relatively close to the end of my contract for the year, I am currently working on lining up other work for the beginning of April. So I'm starting to think about things in terms of trying to make sure I'm not leaving any messes or major loose cords, and thinking about things that I can accomplish basically in the next 6 weeks. So, if you might be thinking about if there are danglers or other things that nobody has ever made the time to do, this would be a great time to have me do them, because I'm just looking for small, medium-sized things so that I don't leave. But in 2 years, there's not PRs dangling from me. Oh, and Sarah actually just got back and said that link can be public. So, okay.
Quick thought. I mean, one thing, the next thing that I had said I was going to do that I think I will definitely not get to do in the next 2 weeks at least is add some stuff to our Kibana Elastic deployment that gives us a little more observability into how the queues are doing. And it sounds like that kind of thing would make the ops burden a little less, because it would make it easier to see if things are working or not working.
It's true. If I don't see a giant infusion of analysis jobs each night, then there's probably an issue with the Wayback Importer.
Right. And it's as simple as posting some JSON at Elastic, right? So if you feel like that's the kind of thing that you can chew off and work on, I was excited about doing it, but I'm being realistic that it's not going to happen. So do you want to do it?
Yeah, that sounds like a great task, actually.
Okay, cool.
I might invite Jonathan to either shoulder surf or offer input on that.
That's great. I'm kind of in a place where I can easily be interrupted for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, but I can't find 2 hours to dig into something. So if I can help you expedite with Elastic or Kibana questions, I'm no expert, but I do have some experience now.
Yep, I'll poke you on Slack if I get stumped.
I think I don't know if it's clearly laid out in an issue. The things I was thinking about is the right metric there when we put things on the queue and remove things from the queue, or is it a heartbeat on the queue sizes, or both? And if it's a heartbeat for the Rails stuff, which is all the queuing we're doing right now, you probably want to use the module clock, which is a really good, straightforward way to make like a process that's running with all the Rails stuff loaded that just you can schedule. So like the clock module lets you write out almost in a much more human readable but cron style thing, like every 2 minutes do this, or every 30 seconds do this, or whatever. So I think it's sort of what you want for heartbeat stuff.
I suspect that, in fact, I bet I know that, I think we looked this up and it might even be an issue, that Metric Beat already knows how to talk to Redis. Yep. So in terms of the queue itself, you might have to do almost no work. I'm putting this in the Zoom chat to monitor the state of the queue. And then my theory would be that you would want the workers to not do a heartbeat style thing, but to push an update whenever they do anything or receive anything.
I think that needs some looking into, because I remember when I looked at it before, it looked like, and maybe I was misreading, but it looked like it was basically just able to log like a standard set of metrics about a Redis instance.
But nothing about its contents.
Yeah. And so I think what we really specifically want here, I mean, it would be good to have that stuff too. But like with the queues, I think the thing we're specifically looking for is like, what is, we know we have 4 queues. What is the size of each one every
Yeah, okay.
30 seconds or every minute or something?
Okay, yeah. I think I remember you being right about this now that you remind me of that conversation. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah. There might be a way to pull that like directly out of Redis if there's a lower level thing. I don't know how, like you'd have to look into how Rescue, which is the queuing system, actually structures those things in Redis. But if we're just running like code that runs within Rails or has Rails loaded, then you can just do rescue.size, name of queue, and it'll just give you a number, which is super straightforward. So that's why I think clock might be the easy way.
cool.
Yeah, and we've had pretty DB has been fairly reliable, so I don't think we have to worry too much in practice about it sort of not being able to complete that task.
Right.
Because we'll notice if we don't have DB doing things.
Right.
Oh, I would hope so. I'll take a look at both approaches.
Right. There's also another easy one to actually maybe a good first one. There's something called Heartbeat, which is among these Beats modules that just come with Elastic. And that would be the way to tell if DB is up, right? It's basically it pings the server. So that's one to add as well. I'll put these in Slack anyway.
Awesome.
Good enough for today?
Cool. Yeah. If unless anybody has another thing they'd like to raise.
No, I don't think so.
Jay, can we just chat after this call for?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say give me 2, and then I'll let's
Oh,
just do one-on-one.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
See ya.